Welcome, everyone. You're watching In the Crosshairs, and I'm your host, Raquel Okyay, and my special guest today is Ken Blanchard. Hey. Ken Blanchard is an author, he's a podcaster, he's a radio host, he's television, print media, he does it all. I'm so happy to have you on the show, Ken Blanchard.
Raquel, thank you for having me on. This is really, really cool.
Awesome. So I really want your opinion on what's been going on in today's society, and that's that real negative connotation to guns. And because of your, being in the industry, I wondered what you've been telling your followers and what you think, or what is your message basically to the public concerning all this negative attention?
The first thing I always try to say is that this stuff is not new. When I started in gun rights activism back in 1991, it was to change the concealed carry around the country, and went on like a whirlwind tour of a few states to testify and to talk to people, regular people, about that the scary gun wasn't really scary, that movies use these things as props because they make us make faces and make us a blood pressure go up and down, that the news and the media has been using firearms as a prop forever. That none of this stuff is new. And unfortunately, you have to keep saying it. The truth doesn't change, but people like to add their own little flavor to it. So as an activist that turned into a podcaster, a blogger, which was easier to do than going door to door and traveling around the country to talk about freedom and truth, I was able to be the calming voice to a whole bunch of people who were just going nuts. Even my mother. I remember my mother was talking about, I know you're a firearms instructor, but isn't all this gun stuff just crazy? And I said, Mom, don't we have the same mother? I was raised by her mother, my grandmother, and Grandma had a loaded shotgun in the kitchen all of our lives, and nobody touched the shotgun. And it was like, and my mother went, oh yeah, but Oprah says, Oprah has a different agenda than you. Oprah has bodyguards, Mom. Oprah is different than we are. And then she was like, oh yeah. So just even in my own family, I had to tweak it. I had to make sure that I was the voice of reason, because when you're getting bombarded by lies, like, for example, a hamster gets run over by a truck and they'll put a picture of Beretta behind it and you're going, wow, a hamster got killed. And then there's this picture of Beretta behind it, or AR-15, and everybody's going, see, those guns are bad, but it's being used
so negative
to get your attention. And if you don't know that you're being manipulated, then you'll fall for it every time. So that's what I'm talking about most of the time.
And what kind of reaction are you getting?
The aha moment. Sometimes I use the name Black Man with a Gun, which really got people like fired up. And then they see this guy who's actually a Baptist preacher, who's really low key, who has been in 5 different wars, who has traveled to some horrendous places in the world. And I know what really bad looks like, and it's not it. So I'm really, really calm. So when they're like, we got to do this, and I go, no, we don't. Just stop the madness. I'm still trying to preach positivity and peace and love, and I'm the mushiest dude you'll find. And it's because I appreciate life so much that I will protect it. And I will protect our freedom because we have it like nobody else. I've had a chance to be in countries where you can't do anything without the police or the military coming to get you. We don't have it that bad in this country, but we don't have anything to judge it by. Folks are going by what their neighbors say, and Pookie don't know squat. Pookie's just talking out of his head. So when Pookie raises up a sign and says there's like violence in the street and there's police brutality, go to the Philippines and talk that stuff. Go to India and talk that stuff. Go to Brazil and talk that stuff. Until you walked a mile in some other folks' shoes, you don't know how good you have it here.
I think you're right about that. And that's such great advice, and it is positive. And I have listened to your radio show, and I do absolutely love the preacher aspect of your persona and your person. And I think that there really needs to be that message of love, and really the message of love returns positive love. So what would be your advice then to just say somebody like, your next door neighbor, your friends, they enjoy our rights, they enjoy our freedoms in our country. What would you suggest to them to not get too upset over the firearms things, but what can they do to feel like they're doing something productive in favor of protecting the Second Amendment?
One of the things I tell people all the time is we have stuff that our fathers and our parents never had. That is the internet. You can Google anything. Search the truth for yourself. And depending on who I'm talking to, if I think I have somebody who's really, really interested for knowledge's sake and not doing it for an emotional or a knee-jerk reaction, because see, some people have been victims, and victim of a crime has a 50% chance of saying, I don't care, just take it all away, or never again. So depending on the victim deal, is how I talk to them. But I'm saying, Google this from an honest opinion. Look and see what this firearm has actually done. And then I put it personal. I go, well, you know me. I'm the gun guy in the neighborhood. And they go, yeah, but you wouldn't hurt anybody. I go, that's right. So think about the other person with the long beard and all the tattoos that you think is scary. Maybe you're being judgmental. Maybe you're being racist. And I challenge them on their own beliefs. And they go, oh, yeah, Brother Blanchard, I got you. And I'm going to see, you got to check yourself. Because sometimes you can get spun up on somebody else's words.
That's very good advice, too. I'm following you. I'm connecting. I'm going to live your, I do really like it. And because people really do want to feel like they're being active and they're doing something productive, to make sure that the public is aware that the Second Amendment is really more about the Bill of Rights. The Second Amendment is something that's God-given. Your right to defend yourself, really. So you should have the choice to defend yourself in any manner you choose. So you can choose to defend yourself with something other than guns. What I like to tell people, Ken, is that while I might not be armed in public, I live in the state of Florida, so I could be pretty sure that somebody is. And that makes me feel safe.
Yeah.
Because now I know if some crazy person comes into the room, shooting us up, I know someone is there who is armed and might be able to protect me. And when you don't have that, so if I was sitting out in the public in the state of New Jersey, I would be fearful because I know nobody's armed. So the only people armed in the state of New Jersey are criminals.
True.
From my perspective, I think gun control laws penalize law-abiding citizens and gun owners. Do you agree?
Totally. And the first thing I'll get a mother who at first she says, well, I don't want my children to have guns or be around them. And I go, I get you. I totally understand. And there's nothing wrong with anybody's personal choice. But then I'll flip it and say, well, if somebody was attacking your children, would you not protect them? And they change automatically. I mean, it's like magical. They become mama bear and they go, nobody's touching my kids. And I go, exactly. And that's why I'm here. So you don't have to move. But if I fall, I expect you to protect your kids. And they're like, yeah, damn right I will. And I was like, see, we're on the same. The Second Amendment, that's all it's about. And it gives us something that nobody else has in their country. They put it in the Second Amendment in the Constitution so long ago, along with a whole bunch of other stuff that is evergreen. It's never, see, even though we have MP3s, DVDs, CDs, Alexas, and a whole bunch of new cool stuff, we haven't changed humanity. Humanity still is evil. Humanity still can do negative things. So just because we haven't updated our people, there's a potential for trouble. And just in case, just like you have a fire extinguisher in your home, you might want to have a firearm too, just to protect yourself from the human predator that is real and is out there.
It is very real. And people, I think most people understand that, evil exists. And the reality is that our legislators, whether, statewide or nationwide, they simply can't legislate us into safety.
No, you
I
can't.
don't think that's really possible. We can create laws that, might keep us safe, is in a security scenario, I think. But as far as creating these laws that take our things away from us, like our right to be armed or our right to carry, to protect ourselves, our right to self-defense. And that self-defense isn't just limited to the evil of the guy in your neighborhood who's robbing homes. That is also applies to our government. So if we are in an event that our government has become so tyrannical, the founding fathers made it so that we have also the option to fight our government with the same arms that they have, which was part of the Second Amendment. So our right is not just to protect against the bad guys, you know, in the neighborhood, but it's also to protect us against the bad guys in the government.
What's funny about the government is that it's still people. And every time I've talked to a legislator, a congressman, a senator, a representative, I found out that they're playing a game. It's like Judge Judy for them, and they choose a side, and it's a debate to them. They don't really mean half the stuff that they say, but they know that if they can create a new bill, create a new law that won't change or save a life, but they consider they have done it on their watch, they can get voted back in. So they pick something really stupid, like we're going to pick all pink guns this week, like we're going to outlaw all pink guns. Now, you and I know that getting rid of pink guns won't stop anything. But for the mass amount of people who just want something to be done, that's a win. So it gets them jokers back in office, and they own guns themselves. But they do this shell game with people, and it's so ingenuous, so fake. It's a shame, but it's the folks we got in office.
A majority of them, for sure.
Yeah, not everybody.
It's very unfortunate.
But too many.
Too many.
Yeah.
And so I think that really another option that we have as citizens is that, you know, we can run our own people for public office, and most of the time it's advantageous to us if we do it on a local level. So if anyone's really interested in getting involved in their involved in politics or running for office to make some big changes, what they can do is start local.
That's true.
Get on your school board, you know, your county legislature, your town council. There's you know, different states have it, different localities call it different things. But if you want to get involved and really make some real changes, and you are articulate and you can something you want to do it. You just got to do it locally. Start locally, and then you can build yourself up. I know a congressman in Congress right now, John Faso from New York, District 19, and he's out of Long Island. He started as county legislature, I think it was county executive, and then he ran for New York State Assembly, and he was in office. I was a volunteer for him back in the day, before he was a nobody, when he was a nobody. And then he ran for state assembly, served in the state assembly, I think 2 terms, and then he ran for governor, he lost, and then he ran for Congress, and he's there. So, I think that's and he's a good guy. He's one of us. He's a good guy. And I think that that's something available to anybody. It's not easy, and it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice. Political office is a sacrifice, and I think some people go in it for the right reasons, and then once they get in, they flip over and they start playing the game, like you were talking about, the shell game.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but luckily, there's enough good guys still in there that we haven't totally turned into, totally backwards back to the 1940s. But it's a ongoing battle. That thing about vigilance, you must be eternal vigilance. That thing's real. Every day we get up, you have to fight for the freedom that we have. You can't sleep on it and think somebody else is going to take care of your stuff. I
think so too. We all have to. And the majority, can overcome this, as you said, it's all the time, the negative towards guns. But especially, I think recently, a lot of states are moving for gun control law or gun laws and stuff. Even during an election, cycle, they're still doing it in midterm elections, which I'm surprised. But
it's low-hanging fruit.
I want to know how to put a handle on them sometimes, and in order to do that, it's really about the voters, because we have a lot of power. So if you can get 10 voters together and we're all on the same issue, for instance, Second Amendment, and now we got 10 voters and we're going to our capital, our state capital, and we're knocking on some doors. Hey, what are you voting for? You know, things like that. Puts a lot of pressure. And I saw this happen just recently in the state of Delaware because the state legislature, which is overwhelmingly Democrat, they wanted to pass a ban on M16s, or they wanted an assault ban, and this is the first state, right? That's their motto. A bunch of constituents went to the Capitol. They protested. 200 people showed up. One of my friends was there. He was in fact quoted in the paper, but the bill died in the Senate committee. Why? Because 200 people showed up.
Yeah. You gotta put the boots on the ground. You can't let somebody else do your work for you. If you care about anything, you're gonna like take a day off of work. You're gonna have to move. And the law and the life you save for the future could be your kids. So don't sleep on stuff. You might have to get active and get off the couch. Put your television on DVD-R. Let that thing record and go and do something for the rest of the country.
Yes, I agree. And there's many ways to do that. It's reaching out to the public. It's reaching out to the politicians. You know, and if you've never actually shot a firearm, sometimes all it takes is come down to the gun range.
That's true.
Give it a shot, and they soon learn that this is fun. This is interesting. I love shooting. I think it's, obviously it's a sport as well, and so many of us Americans enjoy it so much, and I can't fathom why the other part, some other Americans are looking at me saying, no, you can't do that. I have to take that away from you, and somehow school shootings are going to stop. I want to talk about school shootings for a second.
All right.
I want to know what your opinion is. A lot of things going around.
Right now, we got a couple of things happening at the same time. You have access to social media. You have people becoming instant celebrities and getting their platform. So there's a lot of people who are really happy to get on a bandwagon so that they can be seen. So a lot of attention gangsters out there. So that you got that happening. So you got the Second Amendment. So they can pick a side, and if they pick the right side, they'll get funded by a superstar, and they'll go from no Twitter followers to being a verified Twitter follower. You have that. You have even people who have no hope in life. They have no desire to do anything. They choose to be a shooter, to take out their friends and their families. Folks who used to just go off and jump off a bridge now want to become active shooters, now want to be famous in death. And our media is set up to make them celebrities. So it's kind of helping that whole thing. And then despite all the education, all the information, nobody's reading it. And because if it bleeds, it leads still works. They're pushing the agenda. So if you have anybody who stops an active shooter, you have somebody who comes out and stops a murderer, that just kills a whole news cycle. And as great as it is, they won't promote that. But let that thing happen in a school. Let it happen in a place where guns are already outlawed, where you can't have a gun within 500 feet. And now it's big news, and it will be on for a month. And our attention gangsters will jump up there and they can pontificate. And even our little kids are looking for more likes on social media and to become activists. There's a big push right now to be civil rights era people. So they're doing the same thing at the 60s, but don't have a leg to stand on for the gun rights thing. They want to be activists. They want to be heroes in a movement. So they're just jumping on stuff and don't even have the facts. So it's all that happening at the same time. So we have a society that's egotistical and godless, that people will choose to take life, the most precious thing you can have. You have people who love to promote this stuff. So it's a recipe for disaster.
Indeed it is. I can agree with that. I wonder if you are in favor of having police or some type of security guards, whether out in the open or concealed at schools.
I am. You have to be trained though, and I'm gonna ask you to pause me for a minute while I go upstairs.
Yeah, I gotta shut my sound. My phone is beeping.
Okay.
And I forgot to shut the sound off. Okay, I'm just gonna, I think I could just, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, we'll edit that out. I think I could just stop it and then re-record. Yeah, I can pause it.
Okay. You back? All right. One of the cool things about the last couple of years is that a lot of folks are getting involved in the firearms debate. Unfortunately, it's because of the negatives that happen, and the school shooting is one of them. I think you were asking me, talking about the should it be firearms, or not firearms, but cops and security.
Yeah, people. Or security guard, something at schools.
And I think it has always been, but when stuff happens like this, we kind of blow it out of proportion. There needs to be better training for those folks who do decide to do it, because it's like working in a prison, actually, where the inmates, unfortunately, they're your kids. You don't want them access to your firearm, so you have to treat it like it's a facility, and you have to do it more discreetly than we would normally like to see it. So the training has to change. You can have armed security and nobody ever sees that they have a firearm. You have to become like a Bobby, I guess, from London. But they do it. They do it successfully. And in case of trouble, then you act. Whenever you see the law enforcement officer or the security guard that has a firearm on their side and the badge, those are just elements of protection, just like having a fence and a camera. It would be better probably if we had more concealed carry security on campuses, where the guy with the blue blazer, the burgundy blazer, was also armed, and then that would change things. The people in the school would probably know they were packing, but the kids wouldn't know. Maybe not all of them will be armed. You could just, the whole strategy has to change. Right now, we're still operating like it's 1940, and we have to fix that.
I think definitely. Why is it that the public, they're so afraid of even that discussion? Like you said, it's already there, the security, and the kind of security I think you're talking about is some layers. Mm-hmm. So, you want that, because it is, I think it's a deterrent. If you're a student and there's an armed guard, there's a deterrent there. And then on the inside, there's something more secretive that kids aren't really knowing what's going on. But those officers who would be, kind of patrolling the school, the advantage is that they get to know the kids.
Right.
And they get to know the vibe of the school. Where do the bad kids kind of hang out? Where do and that's kind of good, because it sort of it's a bird's eye view. It's almost better than a camera. It's a bird's eye view, and as long as like you said, they're properly trained. I never really looked at it like that, Ken, and I'm glad you brought it up. And that it would have to be a special type of training because of the risk of one of the students getting a hold of the firearm from either the security that's concealed or the security that's not concealed. So we wouldn't want something like that. I've also heard some parents say it wasn't just that they didn't like the idea of that it was a potentially dangerous for students, but they were also saying things like, I had a school teacher tell me this once, that they're afraid that an armed teacher, and I know we're not talking about armed teachers, but she was saying, like, if you had an armed teacher and the kids were getting really, really bad, and she was like, we just don't know, now we got the teacher. So I thought, okay, I wouldn't want that to happen, but I think teachers, have a level of responsibility that I don't foresee something like that happening. But I do see a big, at least that they think it's not okay, because the way I see it is we have governors who have armed guards. Our president has armed guards. our airports, our banks. We protect our money.
Yeah.
Right, with armed guards, don't we? So I don't see any problem with protecting our schools with armed, guards, some type of something. But at the same time, I absolutely would want us, and I don't see why not. We're responsible adults. If we're going to put more armed security guards into schools, we're going to do it in a responsible way. That's what we're supposed to do. We're the adults. That's what we do. Right? We get our people trained by you, Ken, somebody like you who knows what they're doing. Get them trained how to react in certain situations, how to react in a school shooting, and then this way they're prepared. Look, nobody's perfect. People make mistakes. People make mistakes, and I make plenty of mistakes. So we also have to take everything with a grain of salt. I don't have to be. I might be wrong. I might be wrong. I don't know, but I'm willing to have that conversation. To go ahead and put those layers of defense, in my opinion, those layers of defense inside the schools. And I have young kids, so it really concerns me.
Yeah, we do it for everything else except for our kids. We've kind of like just let that part go. I've been in security my whole life and not even wanting to be. It just became what I am. Every job with a guard on it, I've been it. I mean, when I was a kid, I think I was a safety guard, a lifeguard. I went to the Marine Corps and became a Marine security guard at embassies. I've bodyguarded people. I've been VIP protection security specialist. I've traveled as a police officer overseas protecting people. It's in my DNA, and it's not like my favorite thing in the world. I just know how to do it really well. And I know that the concentric rings of security start off with the outer perimeter, like a bullseye, where you have a fence line. Almost every school has that. And then there's another layer. Usually it's armed security or somebody who's patrolling. Then you have, it keeps going until you get to the middle to your protective person. In the old days, the big football coach was the security guy. They would call the big guy, whoever was the coach of the football team, the principal, and maybe whatever other big teacher. The math teacher was usually a big guy for some reason. They would go run to all the trouble. But our world has changed a little bit. There's a little bit more evil that exists. So we need to just change the way we think about things and protect it, like you said, like we do our money, because our kids are worth more than a dollar. So if we just put more mindset to it and stop going off of sound bites and quick fixes, we can fix it.
I think so too. And I think it's a logical conclusion to want to protect children in the same way that we protect, and we successfully protect. It's not like we're having these random shootings inside, federally protected buildings.
Right.
So I think it is a way for people to look at it. I think they should be looking at it, but they're not, Ken. Instead, yeah. What they're doing is they want their state legislatures, they want their federal representatives to go ahead and create laws. They're like begging them, go create gun laws, because somehow in the world, in a warped world, that's going to protect kids. Like, how do we convince them that, it's apples and oranges, really. It's apples and oranges. We cannot protect children by penalizing law-abiding gun owners.
The good people, yeah. You can't legislate crazy. You just can't.
Right.
And you can't wish this stuff away either. You have to like step up to the plate and ask the hard questions and discuss it with people. I mean, we got smart people that nobody talks to. There are tons of professionals that were willing to give away their expertise, but nobody wants to talk to them.
Yeah, right. Raquel Okyay does.
Except for you, nobody else.
I got to tell you, you know what? I reached a milestone today on In the Crosshairs.
Oh, what you got?
Today is my 10th executive, my 10th consecutive show. So it's episode 10. There's 10 straight weeks of In the Crosshairs, and every week I've been bringing on, like expert activists, all kinds of different people. I had a lady from California come on a couple of weeks ago. It was a fantastic show. She's running for U.S. Senate.
Erwin Cruz.
Yes. Have you heard of her?
No, I was checking out your site because you got
Nice.
dynamite stuff on there. I was like, man, I'm impressed. I'm just
Thank
a little.
Yeah, Erin Cruz is a great guest, and she's she's running for a U.S. Senate against Dianne Feinstein. Of course, Dianne Feinstein is a really anti-gun. We don't support Dianne Feinstein. Never. No, we don't. And she's, Erin was talking about the fact that she was a 25-year incumbent. And then now we have this, and I understand, the front runner in the primary. I think actually we should have some results today.
Yeah.
I think it was yesterday.
Yesterday.
The GOP primary. But in any event, it was so nice it was so refreshing to have a female in particular, because it's really like a men's dominated industry. So whenever I run into another female who's also very pro Second Amendment, I'm like, yay! So, so we had a really good time, and it takes a lot of courage to do what she is doing. And that was just kind of something like what I was talking about earlier. And that it's, if you have the gumption and you have the seriousness and you have, a little extra time, like, DVR your favorite show and everything, and go ahead and go to your town meetings. What are they talking about? What kind of laws are they doing? Try to figure out what's happening. And all of these things sort of like, you start at a local level. In politics, everything is local. I didn't say that. Some famous person said that a long time ago. I think it was, one of the presidents. I don't remember. I think it was Gerald Ford, actually. I think it was Gerald Ford. All politics is local. And if you want to get something done on a state and a bigger level, start local. And then you move your way up and you get, big. Look what we did in New York. I remember, I know you a long time, Ken. So I interviewed you for a story for Human Events. And I want to talk about a little bit my home state of New York. And I know you were there, because the New York SAFE Act, which was passed, we're going on 6 years, I think. I think we had our 5-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And that was a gun control law, as you know, that was passed in the middle of the night, very little debate, without the normal procedure, which was that laws do get like 48 hours, and they have to go through debate and all kinds of things. The governor, who was very anti-gun, Andrew Cuomo, he just basically railroaded the law. It was right after Sandy Hook. There was a mad rush, I think, across the country for officials, state-level officials, to create these laws. It's sort of what we're going on now, right after Parkland, I think. But they were successful with an overwhelmingly majority of Democrats in the state assembly. That it was the state Senate, while the Republicans had a very slim majority, they couldn't defeat that vote because Republicans voted for the SAFE Act. Now, the people, they really came out in force. And you were there, Ken. And I think there were like reports of, thousands and thousands of people showed up at the Capitol in Albany to protest the New York SAFE Act.
That was so cool. To this date, it was April 1st, 2014. That was the biggest crowd I've ever spoken in front of. And it was 20,000 people. 20,000. That's my state. Half of those people are my friends. That's nice. That's nice. That was so awesome. And I do think it had its effect. At least in the hearts and minds of people. I think that massive protest, and while the mainstream, like to bring the numbers down, I certainly was covering it, in Human Events, and other state publications were also covering the mass demonstration of New Yorkers against the New York SAFE Act. And what was great about it was that, and this, I wasn't there, but I did a lot of interviews, people who were there the same day that you spoke. And what I understand was it was such an
it was like a family event, you know, so it was like all kinds of people, you know, short, tall, fat, skinny, black, white, kids, babies, wheelchair, strollers, like things like that. It's like a big barbecue, like it's a big family event. And I think the public doesn't realize that, you know, people like you and I, and you don't have to necessarily be a gun owner, but you can be a defender of the Second Amendment. You know, we're normal people. We're not bad guys. Right? When people say, you know, who's the NRA? We are. You and me. Like we don't hurt anybody.
That's how you stop the madness when somebody says, man, those NRA people, and I go, I'm a life member. And they look at you like, oh, you are? And I was like, yeah, so you're like talking about me right now. And they're like, well, maybe not you, but I was like, yeah, see, watch who you're talking about.
Right. That happens to me too sometimes. Yeah. And people are kind of like, what do you mean you write about gun rights? You know, and I can't, that's sort of the message I'm trying to get out there. And I'm bringing on, you know, all of it. I really have the show centered around Second Amendment. And even with the 10 episodes, every single person that has been on my show has given us a unique perspective. So all of you we're not exactly have the same, you know, same perspective. We have different ways and different ideas, different research, different specialties. And it's been fantastic doing the show because it's a learning experience for me.
We're American. We're from all over the place. All colors, all religions, all creeds, all preferences, but we believe in freedom, and freedom is colorless. One of the funky things that happened one time, I was pastor of a small church in Washington, D.C., and we had these international visitors come in the back, and they were setting up a camera, and they asked the deacons could they film the service, and the deacon was all puffed up. He was full of himself. He was like, "Oh, you've come all the way from where?" And they said, "From France." They were like, "Oh, this is great. We got French people in our church. They're coming to see our church and our service and whatever." And the guy goes, "Yeah, we really big interest in your pastor." And the deacon like furrowed his eyebrow for a minute, and he said, "Yeah, Reverend Blanchard's a good preacher. He's a good guy. Do you know him?" And they go, "Yeah, he's the black man with a gun." And my deacon just dropped his head. And I thought, yeah, they get it, and they don't even live here. So I won't be here much longer. I can tell.
That's great. I think people worldwide look at America, and I think that they want to be here. I think that they appreciate, you know, like you were saying, go walk in their shoes. It's not the same. My dad, you know, he was born and raised in Cuba, and he, you know, ended up getting political asylum. But it was not easy. It was a tough course. And in fact, because he was a writer for the newspaper in La Habana,
Wow.
he was, you know, in the beginning, my dad was for the revolution, and he was sort of, you know, on Castro's side because he promised free elections and democracy. When he sort of, you know, after the revolution actually happened, that didn't happen. So he went around stealing everybody's property, collecting property with goons, my dad said. And if you didn't give up your property, you were shot dead. So this is communism, you know, through the eyes of my dad. So he goes running to the newspaper, and Castro did this. They're not doing what they said. Da, 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 published. Boom. Next thing you know, he's picked up and he's put in prison, and he gets a sentence that's death. He gets a sentence that's death. True story. And because my father studied in the monastery, and at the time the Catholic Church was still very powerful in Cuba, it was like the bishop had actually known my father personally because my father was one of his students. And also my father did writing for them too. He wrote for them. So they swooped in. They literally got him and they put him on a ship to New York Harbor. And that's where he was able to get a political asylum and meet my mother.
Look at God.
But this is communism, right? So the communists don't want you to have guns. They don't want you to have firearms because when they come knocking on your door trying to take your property, they don't want you to shoot. They don't want you to shoot them. They're afraid. You know, and this is another, you know, this is just another reason. And we do have a history in a world history that shows that despotic governments routinely disarm. They have to disarm the public because otherwise they cannot take 100% control over them because people get fed up. That's what I think.
Totally right. Totally right. But if you don't have that perspective, you'll go by what they say on television today. And you're just missing so much history, so much of our past. You don't have to go back that far. This is just your father. It's not like you have to go back to like the Civil War or anything. It's just one generation back. Everything that I've seen has happened since I've been around. When I was a real little baby, like 2 and 3, my stepdad put me on his shoulder at the march on Washington. So I got a big old button that's almost as old as me with Martin Luther King's face on it. I've been a child of the civil rights and didn't even know what was going on. I just saw adults acting to stuff so that later I put the dates with the pieces. So now when we read history, I can add stuff to it. Like I know when the city burned, and I remember when they made us go home early because there was threats. They just killed a senator. They just killed a president. They just killed a civil rights leader. I remember that, the fear as a little kid watching the adults go crazy. You got a chance to listen to your dad tell you first off. So when folks try to figure out, why are you so passionate? Why are you not listening to so-and-so? Because we're here. This isn't like, we're not reading this stuff off the internet. This is not some Snopes stuff. This is, we know the other story to it. So there's more to it. And freedom isn't free. You have to fight for it. You have to keep it alive. You have to make sure that our generation, that our kids don't fall for the okie doke, because there's always somebody like Castro coming up in the ranks. Always, nonstop.
Yeah. And there really is a long history of this happening. So as soon as your government wants to take away your right to protect yourself, there's some, your eyebrows have to go up.
Yeah.
You gotta be like, what? Who?
Exactly.
What? You want to take from my house? My firearm? Think about it. It's to me, it's so logical. It's so logical. And it, like I said a few minutes ago, it's the reason why I started this program, because I was offered to produce a show, a web TV show, because I do a lot of radio, and I been very excited about doing it, and I could do it on whatever topic I want. So I could talk about politics, I could bring on, kind of whatever I wanted to do. But I want to go back to guns, because I haven't been writing for Human Events. It's been about at least 2 years, and I really, really miss it. And so that's number one. I really, really miss it. And I want to stay on top. And this is another way for me to stay on top of the topic.
Yep.
Because I'm learning from the experts. That's how I'm an expert, because I spent 4 years interviewing experts, and then when it stopped, it was like, not what I do. Anyway, so I'm so excited to have this program. So it really, I gotta put the light on. I am focused on doing a Pro 2A show. This is my 10th week. We are going to just keep railroading forward. I want the listeners or the viewers to come back next week, every Wednesday, 1 p.m. at Eastern Time. TLBTV.com is my show. And I hope you come back next week. And Ken, before we wrap it up, I want you to let the viewers know where they can find you, how can they contact you, and where can they get more information about you.
You can find me on blackmanwithagun.com. I have a podcast that's been going since 2007 called The Black Man with a Gun Show. So just go to blackmanwithagun.com and you'll find all the links, all my content, all the cool stuff that's Ken Blanchard. And there's another Ken Blanchard. He's the author of the 1 Minute Manager. So to break up that confusion, I always put 2 N's at the end of Ken, so you know it's me and not Dr. Ken H. Blanchard in San Diego. So this is the gun Ken, the preacher, the pistol packing preacher is me.
Double N.
Yes.
Kenn.
Yes.
Ken Blanchard.
So nice, had to do it twice.
I like that. You are nice. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much.
I miss you. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and have the last word. It's been a great show, and I'm so grateful for you to come on.
Raquel and everybody watching, make sure you check out this show as it grows. It's going to be awesome like this one. And remember, anybody who gives you a firearm is a friend, but anybody trying to take one away from you is your enemy. Until next time, shalom, baby.
Excellent. Shalom. Thanks again.
You're welcome.